He was screaming, and no one cared. Not the flight attendant who narrowed her eyes from across the aisle. Not the white man 2 rows up who grunted loud enough to echo. Not the group of teenagers smirking as they pulled out their phones. Maya Brooks rocked her baby in trembling arms, the 6-month-old wailing so hard it sounded like a siren ricocheting through the airplane cabin. She whispered frantically to him, "Shh, baby, please, please." Her voice cracked. Her knees bounced. Her body curled inward under the heat of 100 judging stares. The economy section felt like a pressure cooker. Recycled air, fluorescent lighting, cramped knees, and now her son's desperate cries bouncing off the plastic and steel. It was her nightmare unfolding, and it wasn't even halfway through the flight. She hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. Not after pulling a double shift at the diner, racing home to pack, then catching this red-eye from LA to Chicago. The ticket alone had drained every last dollar she had. And now this? Now she was that woman, the one people would film and shame online. "Try to keep him quiet, ma'am," a flight attendant muttered as she leaned in, lips tight. She didn't even fake a smile. "I'm doing my best," Maya said hoarsely. Her son's face was red from the effort, his small hands flailing against her chest. "He hasn't slept. It's the lights, the noise." "Other passengers are trying to rest," the attendant snapped, before pivoting away without waiting for a reply. Maya blinked, stunned, then noticed phones aimed her way. The clicks, the quiet snickers. Her throat tightened. She tried turning him toward her shoulder, patting his back faster, more urgently, whispering, "Come on, baby. Not now." "He's a baby," she heard someone mutter behind her. "She should have driven," another voice replied. She wanted to scream, to explain that her car had broken down 3 weeks ago, that she had walked half a mile with a stroller just to make it to the airport bus, that she had no choice, no help, no backup. She couldn't even afford next month's rent now. Just as she shifted to stand, intent on hiding in the bathroom, sobbing quietly into her son's curls, a deep, calm voice interrupted. "Mind if I give it a try?" She turned quickly. A man stood beside her row, tall, suited, and far too polished for the back of the plane. Neat locks, sharp jawline, a calmness in his eyes that cut through the chaos like cool water. "What?" she asked, her voice hollow with fatigue. He smiled gently. "I've got experience. 5 nieces, 2 godkids. Sometimes it's just a different rhythm they need." Maya hesitated. Everything in her life had taught her to be wary, but something about his posture, the steady ease, the way he lowered himself slightly to her level, quieted her fear. "Okay," she whispered, and carefully handed over her child. The silence was almost instant. The baby tucked into the man's shoulder like he'd known him forever. A soft humming followed, low, familiar, something spiritual and southern, and the tension in the cabin drained like water down a sink. Maya's hands dropped to her lap, still trembling. "How did you do that?" she asked softly. He rocked the baby gently, not looking away. Sometimes babies know who they can trust. Around them, the stares shifted, from annoyance to surprise. The phones lowered. The murmurs died. "What's his name?" the man asked. "Miles," she said, stunned. "I'm Maya." "Elijah," he replied, smiling. "It's good to meet you both." She hadn't felt safe in weeks. But right then, with her son quiet in the arms of a stranger, Maya exhaled. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. Letting a stranger hold her baby should have been out of the question. But exhaustion had a way of stealing decisions from the body, and hers had already waved the white flag. "You sure?" Maya mumbled, her voice thick with fatigue, eyes already closing. Elijah nodded gently. "Get some rest. You've earned it." Her shoulders slumped. The steady rhythm of his breathing, the softness in his voice, and the rare silence from Miles wrapped her in a quiet warmth she hadn't known in months. Before she could protest again, her head leaned softly against Elijah's shoulder. The last thing she heard before the darkness took her was the low hum of his voice, singing something that sounded like home. He had watched her for nearly an hour, watched her fight to keep calm under pressure that would have broken most. And though she didn't know it yet, this moment would change everything. Because Elijah Ford wasn't just some kind stranger and coach. He was the founder of the Ford Foundation, a philanthropic giant quietly funding housing, maternal health, and black maternal justice. He didn't often fly commercial, but something had told him to book this flight. Maya stirred awake as the intercom crackled overhead. "We'll be landing in Chicago in approximately 30 minutes. For a second, she didn't know where she was. Then the pressure of reality returned. She sat up quickly, heart pounding. Miles was curled peacefully in Elijah's arms, completely content. "Oh my God, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't believe I fell asleep on you. That's so inappropriate." Elijah smiled, unbothered. "You were exhausted. You both needed rest." He transferred Miles back into her arms with care, brushing a little blanket across the baby's chest before letting go. "He only stirred once," Elijah added, "but we worked it out." Maya looked down at her son's sleeping face. He looked different, calm, safe. The contrast was almost too much to bear. "It's been rough," she murmured, not meaning to say it out loud. "Feels like I'm just drowning every day." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. She bit her lip. He didn't ask for her life story, but Elijah didn't flinch. "You want to talk about it?" he said softly. "Sometimes a stranger's the best person to listen." Maya hesitated, then nodded. "I'm a single mom," she began, voice low, eyes scanning to make sure no one was listening. "His dad left when I told him I was pregnant. I've been holding it down, diner job, double shifts, barely scraping by. My car's dead, rent's overdue, and I blew my last savings on this flight." She paused, swallowing hard. "My sister's getting married. We haven't spoken since I got pregnant. She thinks I threw my life away. I think she's half right." Elijah didn't speak. He just let her say it. "You're doing more than most ever could," he said finally. "You're raising a child alone, working non-stop, and still showing up for family, even when they haven't shown up for you." Maya laughed quietly, bitter. "You don't even know me." "I've been watching," he said, looking at her. "How gentle you were with your son. How you apologized to every stranger, even when they were being cruel. That's not weakness. That's character." Her eyes burned. "And what about you?" she asked, deflecting. "You never said what you do, or why someone with cufflinks like that is flying coach." He chuckled, dodging. "Business, and sometimes coach reminds me what matters." "That's a non-answer," Maya teased. "You some undercover billionaire or something?" He smiled. "Nothing dangerous, just someone who helps where he can, quietly." Before she could push further, the captain's voice returned, and the moment between them slowly dissolved as passengers began to stir. "I guess this is goodbye," Maya said softly, her voice more unsteady than she expected. She looked at Elijah, this stranger turned shelter, and felt a pang of sadness. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved me from falling apart, and gave Miles the only real sleep he's had in weeks." Elijah reached into his jacket without a word and pulled out a cream-colored card. The kind with weight, not just in paper, but in meaning. "If you ever need anything, and I mean that, call this number." Maya took it slowly. The print was embossed, the font understated but rich. Elijah Ford Founder, Ford Foundation. Below that, a direct number, an address in downtown Chicago. Her eyes widened. "You're Elijah Ford?" Her voice cracked halfway through. Even from her world of broken cars and diner booths, that name meant something. His foundation was known for transforming entire blocks in black communities, housing, childcare, job training, re-entry support. "Guilty," Elijah said with a faint smile. "Didn't want to lead with that." Maya stared at the card. It explained everything. The way he carried himself, the quiet certainty, the generosity. But also made his kindness cut deeper. He hadn't needed to help. He could have stayed in first class, could have let her drown. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Because you didn't need help from Elijah the CEO, he said. You needed someone to hold your son, to sit next to you without expecting anything. That's who I wanted to be. The wheels touched down with a soft jolt, breaking the moment. Around them, people scrambled for overhead bins, ignoring the seatbelt signs. Maya gripped the card tightly. It felt too heavy to be real. This isn't charity, Maya, Elijah said gently, sensing her hesitation. It's an opening, if you want it. In the terminal, she pulled her battered duffel from the bin. The zipper stuck, as always. She tugged harder. Let me help. I've got it, she said quickly, wrestling it free. She hated the reflex, but it was second nature now. Needing help always came with a price. Better to do it alone. As they walked down the jet bridge, the contrast between them sharpened. Elijah walked like a man used to leading rooms. Maya, holding Miles tight, braced herself for the confrontation with Carmen. Where are you staying? He asked. Motel off Halstead, near the venue. She didn't mention the one-star reviews or the heater that barely worked. It's not much, but we don't need much. Elijah's brow furrowed. October in Chicago can be brutal. Some of those places don't even insulate properly. Have you thought about... I can't afford better, she snapped, instantly regretting her tone. Her cheeks flushed. Look, I appreciate what you've done, but I'm not looking for someone to fix my life. He held his hands up in peace. I get it. I really do. I push too hard sometimes, especially when I care. They reached baggage claim. His phone buzzed, insistent. Sorry, he said, stepping back. Work. He answered with a smooth transition. Ford speaking. Maya watched him shift, just like that. The warm man beside her was now commanding, precise, respected. A businessman. She heard just enough. We can't cut corners on vetting. These are single mothers, not case numbers. She froze. Her pulse quickened. Elijah was talking about her, about women like her, drowning in silence. And here he was, fighting for them, while the world turned the other way. She clutched Miles tighter and stared at the business card in her hand, realizing this flight wasn't a coincidence. We're not doing enough, Elijah said into his phone, frustration laced beneath his calm tone. Maya stood frozen beside her duffel, the words echoing louder than they should have. The man she had confided in, the one who had held her child like he mattered, was running a housing program for single mothers. Women exactly like her. Elijah ended the call and turned with that same quiet smile. But Maya was no longer smiling. That housing project, she said slowly, voice sharp with suspicion. How long's it been running? He didn't sense the shift yet. 3 years. We've helped hundreds of families transition into stable living. It's one of the most... And how do people apply? She interrupted. That's when his expression changed. He sensed it now. Outreach, referrals, caseworkers, community centers. Why? She crossed her arms, baby on her hip. You expect me to believe this is all coincidence? That you just happened to sit next to a struggling single mom with no idea who she was or what she needed? Maya, you let me spill my entire life to you, she said, voice rising. You held my son, asked about my rent, my job, my family, all while knowing you had programs made for people like me. He took a step closer. That's not what this was. No? Her laugh was bitter. So what was it? Some feel-good moment for your next fundraising speech? You gonna post about the brave mother you met on a flight? You're angry, and you have every right to be, he said carefully. But you've got this wrong. She shook her head. I thought someone actually cared about me. Not my income bracket. Not my potential. Me. Elijah looked gutted. I didn't help you for optics. I helped because it felt right. Because you felt real. I didn't say who I was because I didn't want that to change the way you looked at me. But it did change everything, she snapped. You could have told me from the start. I sat here thinking I'd finally met someone who wasn't trying to fix me, who didn't see me as a problem to solve. He hesitated. then spoke, low and raw. My mom raised me alone. She worked doubles, went without meals so I could eat. When I see you, Maya, I see her. The words pierced. Her arms tightened around Miles. But pride was louder than pain. You still should have told me. I know. The tension between them pulsed, thick and unsaid. I have to go, she said, voice firm but not angry now. My sister's expecting me. He took a step. Maya, please. But she had already turned away. Each footstep down the terminal felt heavier than the last. She didn't know whether she'd just dodged another disappointment, or walked away from something real, and that uncertainty hurt more than anything. The motel was worse than Maya expected. The heater groaned like it was dying. The carpet told stories in stains. Every cough, laugh, or argument from next door cut through the thin walls like whispers against her skin. But all of it faded behind the weight sitting in her chest. 2 days had passed since she walked away from Elijah, and the ache hadn't moved. She sat cross-legged on the lumpy mattress, trying to fix a snag in the only dress she had that passed for formal. A navy piece, cheap, simple, but filled with memories. Her mother's funeral, a failed job interview. Miles gurgled beside her, finally asleep after a restless night in the unfamiliar space. Tomorrow was Carmen's wedding. Maya still hadn't decided if she could stomach showing up. Her phone buzzed. Rehearsal dinner's at 7. You're still coming, right? Carmen's tone was polite, formal, like they were distant cousins. Maya stared at the message, typed out 3 versions of a reply, then finally settled on, yes, I'll be there. What she didn't say was that she hadn't stopped thinking about Elijah, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she'd pushed away something real. A knock broke the quiet. She checked the peephole. It wasn't a delivery. It was Carmen. Maya opened the door, stunned. Her sister stood in a sleek cream coat, looking every bit the woman with a picture-perfect life. What are you doing here? I needed to talk, before tomorrow. Carmen stepped inside, her eyes scanning the worn-down room with careful silence. If you came to tell me not to embarrass you at your wedding, save it. But Carmen shook her head. I came to apologize. Maya froze. I said terrible things 2 years ago, Carmen began. Accused you of being reckless, selfish. But you didn't know. I was pregnant too. Maya's heart stopped. I lost the baby 2 weeks after that fight. Tears welled in Carmen's eyes. I couldn't face you. I threw myself into planning the wedding and pretended I was fine. But I was furious. Not at you, at everything. You had what I wanted, and I resented you for it. For a moment, the silence between them said everything. Maya reached for her sister's hand. This time, Carmen didn't pull away. I wish I had known, Maya whispered. I could have been there. That's not all, Carmen said, dabbing her eyes. Yesterday, a man called my office, said he'd been trying to reach you. Maya's breath caught. Elijah. He said there'd been a misunderstanding, that he needed to see you. He asked if I'd meet him. Maya stared. You did? Carmen nodded. He told me everything. Not about programs, not about charity, about you. He said he's been looking for you because he's in love with you. Maya blinked. That's insane, she whispered. I told him that, Carmen smiled. But then, he described every word you said, every moment. He wasn't talking like a CEO. He sounded like someone who lost something rare. Maya sat on the bed, still holding Carmen's phone, staring at the photo of Elijah in front of a modest apartment building, ribbon in hand, smile soft, eyes heavy with memory. He wasn't just some rich man with a soft spot. He had lived this, grown up poor, raised by a single mother, knew exactly what it meant to choose between dinner and rent. Carmen pointed to the quote beneath the headline. No mother should ever wonder where her child will sleep. The lump in Maya's throat hardened. He built the program in her memory, Carmen said. His mother's maiden name was Santos. She was from East LA, just like us. He's not pretending to understand. He does. Maya exhaled slowly, all the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. He's here, Carmen added quietly. He's staying at the hotel. Not because he's stalking you or trying to interfere. He just didn't want to leave without a chance to make it right. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. He's at your wedding? I invited him, Carmen admitted, after hearing how he talked about you, how desperate he was to explain. I don't think this is about charity. I think it's about something real. And maybe it's worth giving that a chance. Maya glanced at her daughter, curled into a tiny ball on the bed, breathing softly. She thought of every night she had cried quietly so Miles wouldn't hear, every time she had shut people out to protect herself, every moment she convinced herself she didn't need anyone. But she did. She needed someone who saw her, who didn't pity her, who wanted to stand with her. The next night Maya stood outside the hotel ballroom. She wore a borrowed dress, emerald green, Carmen's idea, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was pretending. Miles was upstairs, finally sleeping peacefully. Through the glass doors, she spotted Carmen gliding across the dance floor. The room shimmered in soft light and gold tones, but Maya's eyes locked on one person. Elijah, seated alone, watching the entrance. The moment he saw her, he stood. Their eyes held, not as strangers, not as caseworker in case, as something else, something deeper. He walked to the door, stopped just in front of her. I didn't know if you'd come, he said. I almost didn't, she admitted. But someone reminded me. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. He smiled gently. I should have told you who I was. But from the second I held Miles, I stopped seeing you as a story. I just saw you. And I knew. I didn't want that moment to end. Maya's voice cracked. I love you. I think I loved you when you made him feel safe, when you made me feel safe. Elijah stepped closer, cupping her face. You'll never have to question that again. He kissed her. Software certain. And in that kiss, she let go of the fear. Because sometimes, the beginning of forever is just a single act of kindness.